Okay, good moed. We are Nagidin. Today's daf is Yevamos Mem Daled. We're going to start about 10, 12 lines down. Mishahaya Nasui. Mirtz Hashem will get deep into Mem Hey Amar Aleph until people have to start leaving. Gemara says Mishahaya Nasui. So the case in the Mishnah, if you recall, was Mishahaya Nasui Lishtei Nashim Umeis Biyasa Ochalitzasa Shal Achas Mehen Poteres Tzarasa. So we said that the chalitza or yibum of one paters the other. Asks the Gemara, Uniyafim Tarvayu, why wouldn't he just marry both of them? Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Kra. He said the following pasuk: Asher lo yivne es beis achiv, bayis echad ubonev ein bona shtei batim. He's only supposed to continue with one house, meaning one brother's house, and not two. He's been nachalotz letarvayu, but why can't he do chalitza for both of them? Amar Marzuk Bartuvi, Amar Kra. A pasuk base chalutz hana'al bayis echad ucholes vein cholet shnei batim. Similar drasha. So what about uniyavim lechada v'nachalutz lechada? But why can't he be miyavim one and do chalitza with the other? Amar Kra im lo yachpotz, because the pasuk says if he does not desire hachafetz yibim, and if he wants to, he should be miyavim and kol ha'ola liyibum ola lechalitza kol she'ein ola liyibum ein ola lechalitza. So anybody who is going to be ola, meaning come to the Beis Din for yibum, would also be eligible for chalitza. Take a quick look at the Rashi Kol She'eino Ola. This is about 8-9 lines down in the narrow lines in the Rashi. Kol She'eino Ola leBeis Din liyibum she'ein zakuk liyisyavim the Rachmana Patra. So anybody who doesn't come to Beis Din for yibum, the Torah paters her. Dichsiv as Beis Achiv bayis echad ubono v'lo shnei batim eino ola lachalitza. So she's out of the picture. So for that reason, he cannot do a yibum followed by a chalitza. Ve'oden further.
When you think about it, it's really not shnei batim. They're both coming from one brother, right?
He's the bias.
He is the bias. So both of them are coming from the same bias.
That's right, but it's his house that he needs that the surviving brother needs to
I know, both of the women are.
I was reading from what's it called? The Gaflo Labat, by Mordechai. The Gaflo Labaita, but he took her. It's on her that she.
All right, the bite is on the woman, not on the man. Okay.
The ode shelo yomru bias mixaso banu mixaso chalutz. And furthermore, we don't want people to say so and so's household it's half rebuilt, it's half chalutz. Asks the Gemara, the yomru. Let people talk. Who cares? So answers the Gemara, if we could ensure that the order would be, he would be miyavim the first wife, and only after the yibum of the first wife he would be choletz the second. That's fine. Choletz v'hadar miyavim. But if you have a situation where he did chalitza first and then he would attempt to do yibum, v'kamlei below yivneh, he is then the Torah applies to him that he shall no longer build, because once he's already choletz, the opportunity for yibum is over, and he will not be allowed to do so. Ve'ema. So now the Gemara wants to know if all of this is true. Maybe the mitzvah of yibum only shows up when there's one wife. But if there's two, since he can only be miyavim one or choletz one, then maybe the whole mitzvah of yibum only counts when there's one, only takes place when there's one wife. Im Kain asks the Gemara that everything we've learned for the last 42 blot, Saras Erva, the Asar Rahman Alamali. Then what do I need all this Saras Erva stuff? We started with that Beis Amar Aleph. So what do I need that for? Hashda Shnayim Be'alma Amrit Lav B'nei Chalitza V'Yibum Ninhu. If two women who are not related to one another at all, they are not B'nei Chalitza V'Yibum. If we were to disqualify both of them and say that only if there's one wife does the mitzvah of yibum kick in, Tzaras Erva Mebaya. Would we ever need Tzaras Erva? Asks the Gemara, Alam Alo. Wait. Why wouldn't you need to teach Tzaras Erva? It's Tzarich, and I'll tell you why you would. Because you might think to say that, let's say a guy is married to his niece and dies. That means the niece falls to her father to yibum. So she might automatically be completely disqualified from this. No yibum, no chalitza. She's completely outside the entire parsha of yibum. v'tisyavim sarasa, and that would leave only one, and that's the tzara. And once again, you might think that when does Yibum kick in? Only when there's one, kamash malanda asira. So therefore, and so in that case, we would teach that it's usher to be miyavim her because she is a tzaras erva, which would lead to indicate once again that you can only do Yibum or Chalitza in a case where there's one eligible Zakuk Yavam. Ella, the Gemara says, the reason that you can still do Yibum and Chalitza when there is more than one spouse involved is because Yevimto Riva. The word Yevimto shows up multiple times in the Parsha, and that is an inclusive word which indicates that there can be more than one woman who is Zakuk Yavam at a time. Haisa achas kshera. So we said at the very top of this amud that if you have haisa achas kshera ve'achas psula, that you have one woman who's kosher to a kohen, and one who is pasul, that if he was going to do chalitza, he should do chalitza on the one who's psula. Amar Rav Yosef, what is the reason? Kanshana Rebbe, because Rebbe taught here. Let's say you're no longer thirsty, you no longer need the water in your pit. Don't empty it out. Other people might need the water. What's the limud here? Don't be choletz a woman who's kosher lekahuna, because then you'll pass her for kahuna. So if this woman is already pasul, let's say she was a grusha, then that's the woman that you should do chalitza with, because she's no worse, and the other one doesn't suffer. Okay, Mishnah, bottom of Memdalet Amud Aleph, 4 or 5 lines up in the narrow lines. Mishnah, Hamachzer Grusha. So 3 cases. A man who takes back his grusha, who in the interim had been married to somebody else, and somebody who marries a woman who was his chalutza, and one who marries the relative of his chalutza, Yotzi, according to Rabbi Akiva, he's got to divorce her, and any child of that union has the status of a mamzer. The Chachamim paskin against Rabbi Akiva, they say the child is not a mamzer. Umodim, and they agree, and we're going to spend a lot of time on this next phrase, the nosei karovas gerushaso, on somebody who marries the close relative of his divorcee, Shavlad Mamzer. Okay, so now to the explanation of the Mishnah. Says the Gemara. Does Rabbi Akiva really hold that somebody who marries the relative of his chalutza, that the child is a mamzer? But Reish Lakish taught that here Rebbe taught achos grusha midivrei Torah, that the sister of a man's divorcee is an Isser Torah, and that explains why the son of this Achos Grusha, who were to marry her former brother-in-law, is a mamzer. But Achos Chalutza Medivrei Sofrim. But an Achos Chalutza is only Medivrei Sofrim, and we don't tag the Vlad of a Dirabanan as a mamzer. So the Gemara says, well, you need to amend the Mishnah. Instead of saying Krovas Chalutzaso, which was the 3rd case mentioned in the Mishnah, Tani Krovas Gerushaso. Say that we're talking about the relative of his Gerusha. Hachanami Mistavra, and this, if you look carefully at the language of the Mishnah, this makes sense. Dekatani Seifa Umodim, Benose Krovas Gerushaso. The Seifa of the Mishnah says, and the Chachamim agree that somebody who marries the relative of his grusha should have Vlad Mamzer. So now, why is that sensible? If it all works out well, if we are already discussing the concept of a krovas gerusha, so hainu umodin. That's why the Mishnah says, and they agree, because we say in the Sefer, the Chachamim in a Vlad Mamzer, umodin benose krovas gerushaso. What do you mean they agree on krovas, on somebody who marries krovas gerushaso? Who was talking about that? Nobody. Unless you amend the language of the Mishnah, then it makes sense. But if you would say, like the original language of the Mishnah, that we were not already discussing Krovas Grushaso, my umodin, that language does not make any sense. Answers the Gemara, well, maybe there's another option. Maybe that line of umodim Benose Kruvas Grushaso is coming to teach us that in cases where the union of two people leads to a chiyuv kares, in that situation, the kid's a mamzer. The Gemara says that can't be haktani lala kaman. But I have a Mishnah later in Daf Mem Tes Amud Aleph that teaches me the same din as follows: Ezehu mamzer, kol she'er basar shehu below yavo. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. According to Rabbi Akiva, a mamzer is anybody who violates the law of lo yavo. Reb Shimon Hatimni, which is corrected on the side, you'll see to Shimon Hatimni. They dropped the Rebbe. Shimon Hatimni Omer, kol shechayavin alav kares bidei shamayim. Reb Shimon Hatimni says that the mamzer only comes from somebody who's chayiv kares, the halacha kedvara, and the halacha is like him. So we see on that from that limud on daf mem tes that we already learned that that yesh mamzer mechayav krisus. So what would I need to teach it here for? Asks the Gemara. Well, maybe v'dima v'kasasim lantana kirem Shimon Hatimni. Maybe our Tana here, maybe our Mishnah right here on Mem Daled is offering a stam line umodim benose krovas grushaso to teach us that we paskin like Shimon Hatimni. Asks the Gemara, but that can't be because in came lisnei sharchayev krisus. Then why did the Mishnah only list that one example? Krovas grusha lamali. Why is it giving me the specific example of a krovas grusha? Again, within this emendation of the Gemara. Elashma mina ayriba. Rather, it must be that this emendation is correct, and we must already have been discussing it. That's why the word umodim makes sense here. The Gemara offers another option. V'dilma leolam lo ayriba. Maybe we're not really dealing with a krovas grushaso. We are instead dealing with the original case of krovas chalutzaso. And maybe since the Mishnah is already talking about these three cases where he takes back his former wife who had already in the interim been married to somebody else, and somebody who married his chalutza, and he married the relative of his chalutza, Tani Nami krovas grushaso. It also brought us another similar case of a krovas grusha. Ela krovas chalutzaso, the Rabbi Akiva, havi mamzer. But we know that a krovas chalutza, according to Rabbi Akiva, is a mamzer, but not according to the Chachamim. So that machlokes stands. Amar Rabbi Cheber Amar Rabbi Yochanan, hainu taimid de Rabbi Akiva. What is the reason that Rabbi Akiva holds that this kid is a mamzer? It brings the pasuk Amar Kra, beis chalutz hanal, hakasov kirao beso. The pasuk still refers to a chalutz as beso, which means that there's some level of marriage level here that would lead this kid to be the vlad of this union of a machzir chalutzaso to be a mamzer. So there he holds that's the oraisa. All right. Now from this point on, the Gemara is going to, I just want to give you just a minute of Divrei Hagdama on what's about to happen. So we're about to learn that a statement of Rav Yosef in the name of Rav Shimon bar Rebbe, that everybody agrees that a machzer grushaso, the vlad, is pagum lekahuna. Okay. And the Gemara will then bring a kal v'chomer to prove that that's true. 3 arguments against that kal v'chomer, 1, 2, and 3. The Gemara will then dispense with arguments 3 and 2, and that first upshlag of the kal v'chomer will stand. That's going to take us a whole bunch of time, and we'll go through it as clearly as we can. Part of it is a little bit confusing. Okay, here we go. Last line of Mem Daled Amud Aleph. Amar Rav Yosef Rav Shimon bar Rebbe, hakol modim machzir grushaso. Everybody agrees that if a guy takes back his grusha who was married to somebody in the interim, top of Mem Daled Amud Beis, shev vlad pagum lekahuna, that the child is pagum to kahuna. Look at the top Rashi. Vim yalda bas psula lekahuna kechalala. She has her own psul. She's not allowed to marry a Kohen. Man hakol modim. Now, who is this hakol modim? Shimon Hatimni. This is coming to include Shimon Hatimni. Dafagav damar Shimon Hatimni ein mamzer mechayav elavin. That even though Shimon Hatimni holds that mamzerim cannot come only from a chiyuv lav, nehi the mamzer lo havi pagumia havi. He may not be a mamzer, but he's certainly got a pagum. He's got a pigam.
I'm so sure he joined.
Okay, and we're back on the Zoom. So let's do the Kal V'chomer one more time. Mikal V'chomer me'almana. Uma almana l'kohen gadol she'eni surah shavra bakol bana pagum. We have a case of almana to Kohen Gadol where she's only usher to him, one person in the world, and the child of that union is pagum. Zu she'isura shavra b'chol eino din shebenak pagum. Of course, the machzor grushaso is going to be pagum, right? Because she's usher universally, meaning that category of woman is usher universally to that category of man. So here is the first of the three kashas on this Kal V'chomer. Ika lemifra. I can tell you that Kal V'chomer does not work. Why? Number one, Mala Almana Shekin, he atzma mischal les. We have the case of Almana l'Kohen Gadol, that if he does consummate Nisuin with her, if they divorce, she herself is usher to other Kohanim. We don't have that here. A Machzor Grushaso, she's not puzzled to anybody. She may not allowed to be married to him, but the kedushin is valid. The od hito eva ksiv ve'in baneh toavin. The pasuk says hito eva. The almana l'kohen gadol, she's a toeva. Doesn't say anything. Sorry, the machzor grushaso, she's a problem. Ve'in baneh toavin, but there's nothing wrong with the children of that union. The od, and finally, Tanya, we have a brisa. Hamachzor grushaso, ve'anose chalutzaso, ve'anose krovas chalutzaso. Those three cases, Rabbi Akiva Omer, ein lo ba kedushin. The kedushin's not valid, and because the kedushin's not valid, ve'ena tzricha himenu get. She does not need a get. Ve'hi psula, ve'vlada psula. She's puzzle, and her children are puzzle. Ve'chofin oso lahotzi, and we force him to divorce her. V'chachamim omrim yesh lo ba kedushin. The kedushin is valid in a case where, in any of these three cases, v'tzricha himenu get, and as a result of that valid kedushin, if he wants to let her go, he must divorce her. V'hi kshera v'vlada kshera, and we see that not only is she kosher, but her children are kosher. So we see here, before we even go any further, that according to the Chachamim, the vlad of any of these unions is kosher, which is not like the limud of the Kal V'chomer. So now we say vlada kosher leman. Lav lekahuna, is it not so that the child of this union is kosher to the kahuna? Answers the Gemara, lo lekahal. Says no, it's not. Cannot marry. It's still pasul lekahuna, but he's not considered a mamzer. He's still allowed in Klal Yisrael.
Halal, but he's not asur.
He's not a mamzer. Ihachi he kshera. Where in the opinion of the Chachamim it says that she is kshera leman. Who is she kosher to? Kahal pshita. Of course, she's kosher to the kahal. Mishum dezanya pasul kahal. Just because she was mizaneh, someone that she shouldn't have, she should therefore be considered usher to the kahal. Definitely not. Elalav lekahuna, but rather she is kosher to the kahal, but pasul to the kahuna. Umidahi lekahuna, vlada nami lekahuna. And if she's kosher to the kahuna, her child should certainly be kosher to the kahuna. So, at this point in the Gemara, we have a question against this Kal V'chomer, because we now have a whole brisa that says and leads us to the conclusion that the vlad of one of these unions, a vlad, is not pagum lekahuna. The vlad is not pagum lekahuna, and in fact, it's kosher. When the Kal V'chomer proved exactly the opposite. So now the Gemara now is going to start to deal with these questions on the Kal V'chomer in reverse order. First, we're going to deal with this brisa.
Well, according to Rabbi Akiva, in this brisa, she should be able to marry another Kohen, because there was no kedushin, there's no get. She's just an almana, so she could go marry the other Kohen. She could go marry the other Kohen. But
he says vehi psula b'vlada pasul.
Right.
He holds that there's a psul there, so we're within the sheet of the Chachamim.
But it doesn't match, because no.
So that's a little bit the answer.
Right. Okay.
Is that you're not talking about exactly parallel cases, and the reason the Kal V'chomer is not going to work is because the level of kashrus and the level of kashrus between the mother and child, and the level of psul and the level of psul and the mother and child, according to Rabbi Akiva, are not the same. So we're going to say the Kal V'chomer isn't strong enough because the psul or the kashrus, depending on whether it's the Rabbi Akiva or the Chachamim, they are not equal. And as a result, that kasha against the kal v'chomer does not work. So let's see how this flows through. Midi iria, are these the same? Hakadisa v'hakadisa. You're not talking about precisely similar situations between the mother, the woman in this union, and the status of the vlad. Hachinami mistavra, and I'll prove to you that it's that logically that's the case. The Katani Resha, he psula v'vlada pasul. The Resha, meaning within the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who says she's pasul, pasula, and the vlad is pasul. He psula laman. Now, who is she pasul to? Ilay malakahal. If we want us to be incredibly machmir and say that she's psula to the entire congregation, Mishum dezanya pasla lakal. No, of course not. Just because of znus does not pasul you to everybody. Ella lav lekahuna. The vlada pasul laman. So he's established that she is pasul to the kahuna, but mutter to everybody else. But what about her child? Ilay malakahuna halakal kasher. Are you saying if you want to suggest that this kid is kosher to the kahuna, that implies that to the kal is kosher. Right. But remember, we're within the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva vlad mamzer. Yeah. He's saying the kid's mamish and mamzer. Ela pshita lekal. So it must be that the kid is pasul to the kahal. So you've got the mother pasul the kahuna, but much to the kal. The kid pasul to everybody. You have different psul between the two. Umi dereisha hakidisa v'hakidisa. And because we just said that within the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, each one of these psulim is a little bit different. Seifanami hakadisa v'hakadisa. Within the opinion of the Chachamim, you could say that the kashrus level is different. The kid, she is kosher only to a kohen.
No, not kohen.
The woman is going to be kosher to.
Not to the kohen.
So the kid is kosher to everybody, right?
No, she.
Oh, the kid's also to a kohen, but mutter to everybody, and she is completely mutter, right?
Yeah. No, she just got to get. She now has to the kohen too.
I want to make sure we get this right.
Part of the time she has to get. She has to get the divorce, and now she has to get a get. When she gets a get, she's supposed to kahuna.
Right. So.
Because she's a grusha now.
So Seifanami, Hakadisa v'Hakadisa, they have different levels of kashrus.
Right. She's kasher to everybody.
Oh, here, Rashi. Hakadisa, Hiksheru Lakuna v'Vlada kasher level bakal. That was the first case. Avala kahuna pagum. Oh, that's on the earlier case. Yeah, that's on the earlier case. So what is the distinction between the levels of kashrus according to the Chachamim? Let's go back and take a look.
Tosa says what I said.
Well, aren't you special?
Thank you, Ad.
Which Tosa did you read so quickly?
I just started first the line of the Shera. When they are the Mexican going Easter to Grusha.
So the Chachamim's opinion was that she's kosher and the Vlad is kosher. It must be that she's kosher to the. No, she's kosher to the kahal, but pasul to the kahuna, and the kid is completely kosher. That's it. So you don't have a parallel level of kashrus.
Right.
So that's why
she needs to get from the kohen. Get.
Only according to the in the opinion of Chachamim. Yes. That's what we're talking about. Okay. So now, first wide line. So we've dispensed with the third kasha on this Kal V'chomer. Right. Now we're going to dispense with the second one. So we said the second issue was Vehito Eva. Right. Earlier we said Hito Eva, but the kid is not Toeva.
Right.
So here we said, no, don't learn it that way. Vehito Eva Nami, Hito Eva Vein Sarasa Toeva. Just don't, but the child of Al Baneha Toavin. So, but the children do have a level of Pagam, which is not like what the Kal V'chomer said. El Almana Kasha. However, the first issue of the Chalala status of the Almana, that's a problem. Because Mala Almana Shekain, he Atzma Mischaleles, because the Almana, the mental to a Kohen Gadol, if they were to consummate that relationship, she is then Usher, it's usher for her to marry another Kohen. But this woman who is a psul, there's no further psul.
Right.
So that really breaks the Kal V'chomer. Ela itmar, hachi itmar. So now we're going to redo this entire mahalach. Amr Rav Yosef, Amr Rav Shimon Rebbe. Now remember, that's the same Amr Rav Yosef, Amr Rav Shimon Rebbe that got us started on the bottom of Amud Aleph. Hakol modim bevo al chayave krisus. Everybody agrees that if a man has bia with any of the chayave krisus, she have vlad pagum.
Really?
That the vlad is pagum. Pagum, right?
Yeah.
So man hakol modim. So who is the hakol modim? Rabbi Yehoshua. Dafagav damar Rabbi Yehoshua ein mamzer mechayave krisus. Even though Rabbi Yehoshua says that a mamzer does not come from chayave krisus, nehi the mamzer lohavi pagum yahavi. It may not be a mamzer, but the kid is definitely pagum. Mikal v'chomer me'almana. Well, this is going to sound familiar. Uma almana lakohen gadol she'ini surashav b'chol. Bina pagum, same kal v'chomer as before, that an almana to a kohen gadol. Her isser is only to this one man in the entire world, and still her child is pagum. Zu she'i surashav b'chol inu din shebina pagum. This one, who is has the same level of isser in that situation. Every woman in that situation has the same level of isser. Of course, the child is going to be pagum. And if you would ask me, Male almana shekin hi atzma mischaleles hachanami kevin shabala asa azona. So too here, this woman, because she was in an inappropriate relationship, it's not that she's considered a zona the way we think of it.
Yeah.
But rather, she does have a psul where she is considered enough of a zona that she is no longer allowed to marry a Kohen. Okay, new topic.
Yeah.
Up three lines up from the bottom lines on Mem Daled Amud Aleph. A quick time check, Arav. Where are we?
I got 15.
Beautiful. Amar Rabbi Baruchan, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Hakol modim be'eved ve'oved kochavim haba alesh abasi shoshev lad mamzer. Rabbi Baruchan teaches in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that everybody agrees that if an Eved Kanani and a non-Jew have bia with a Bas Yisrael, that the child of that union is a mamzer. So man hakol modim Shimon HaTimni. So who is this hakol modim meant to include? The famous Shimon HaTimni. Da'afagav damar Shimon HaTimni in mamzer mechayav ilavin. Even though Shimon HaTimni says that a mamzer does not result from a bia in a case where there's a chiyuv lav. Hane mili top of mem heyam aleph. Hane mili mechayav ilav in the top sebu kedushin. That's only when you have a lav where kedushin could be valid. However, aval hacha oved kochavim ve'eved. But in those two cases, cave the lotaf sebu kedushin kechayav krisus dami. Since kedushin is not a possibility with the two of them, then we are machmir, and we say it's as if, and those are equivalent to chayav krisus, and the kid is a mamzer. Meisive, we ask a kasha on this. Oved kochavim ve'eved abal bas Yisrael vlad mamzer. We have a brisa where the Tanakama says that a non-Jew and an Eved Kanani who have bia with a Bas Yisrael and she conceives that child is a mamzer. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda Omer ein mamzer ela mimisha isur erva v'anush kares. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda says, just like Shimon HaTimni, that mamzer is only in a case where the isur is erva and the punishment is kares. So you would think that Shimon HaTimni would actually align with the Seifa, with Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda. Yeah. So maybe he doesn't agree with the Reisha. Right. So who's the Hakol Modim? Ela Amar Rav Yosef, man Hakol Modim? Rebbe. It's Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Afagav the Rebbe Omer in Advarim Halalu Amurim Ela Divra Rabbi Akiva. Even though Rabbi holds that these Dvarim Halalu, and they're referring to something on Daf Nun Beis, are only said in the name of Rabbi Akiva. Shaya Osa Chalutza Ke'erva. Rabbi Akiva holds that, and as we've learned a couple of times already today, that a chalutza has the status of erva, v'lei lo svirale, but Rebbe does not hold that way. So Rebbe would not hold that that's a deoraisa, because remember, Rebbe taught that that's midivrei sofrim. Oved kochavim ve'eved moda. But in the case of Oved kochavim and an Eved Kanani, Rebbe agrees. How do we know? Because when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he's taught in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avudimi Mishum Rabbeinu, in the name of Rabbi, Ovi Kochavim ve'eved abba Abbas Yisrael avlad mamzer, just like we've been saying. Rabbi now, a story time. Rabbi Achaz Sar Habira Rabbi Tanchum Breda Rabbi Chia Ish Kfar Ako. So these two guys, Paru Kano Shibu Yasa, they redeemed these female captives, the Asru Me Armon the Tiberia, who were coming from Armon to Tiberia. Havachada de Avra Me Ove Kochavim, and one of them became pregnant from one of her non-Jewish captors. V'asu Lakami de Rabbi Ami, and they went before Rabbi Ami to ask a shaila, what is the status of this child? Amar Lahu, Rabbi Ami says. Now remember that it's Rabbi Ami doing this saying, because we're going to need his name in a minute. Rabbi Ami Amar Lahu, Rabbi Yochanan of Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Chanina Dami Ovi Kochavim Ve'eved Abba Bas Yisrael Vlad Mamzer. So Rabbi Ami quoted these three Amoras, and they said that the child is a Mamzer. Amar Rav Yosef says, Ravusa Lemechshev Gavri. So just because three people say it, that's the psak. Haravu Shmuel Bevavel, but Rav and Shmuel in Bavel, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Bar Kapar Be'eretz Yisrael, and these two other Talmidei Chachamim in Eretz Yisrael, ve'amli la chalufe Bar Kapara ba'ayli zignei darim, and some say that you swap out Bar Kapara and put back in his place the Chachamim of the south. Da'amri ovi kochavim ve'eved abal bas Yisrael avlad kosher. So you have a machlokes. So why are you saying just because three people said that it's three people said it's a mamzer? Like, why are you paskening that way? El Amar of Yosef, Rebbe he, but rather they're not paskening like those three people. They're paskening like Rebbe. Dichi asa Rav Dimi Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Avudimi, because when Rav Dimi came, he taught in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak in the name of Avudimi, Mishum Rabbeinu, again in the name of Rebbe Amru. Ove kochavim ve'eved abba bas Yisrael avlad mamzer. That an Ove kochavim or an Eved who has beer with a Bas Yisrael, the child of that union is a mamzer. So the psak is like Rebbe. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Omer havlad mekulkol. So now Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi has a different view. He says that the vlad has a pagam. Now Leman, who is his opinion? Leman, sorry, who is he? This child mekulkol to? Ilay malakahal. If we say that he's pagam to the enter Klal Yisrael and has the status of mamzer, ha'am Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, ha'am Rabbi Yeshua havlad kosher. This same Rabbi Yeshua says, who just said that the kid is makulkal, also said he's kosher. Ella lekahuna. Rather, it must be that this level of kilkul only passes the child to the kahuna. Dekulhu amorai de mechashri modu shevlad pagum lekahuna. Because all of these amoraim who said that the kid is kosher, they do agree that he's kosher level b'kal Hashem. He's not a mamzer, but he's still pasul lekahuna mikal v'chomer me'almana. And how do we know that he's pagum to the kahuna? Our favorite kal v'chomer. Ma almana lekohen gadol sheini surah shaveh b'chol b'na pagum. Just like an almana to an kohen gadol who was only usher to him, her child is pagum. Zu she'isura shaveh b'kol enudin sheb'na pagum. This one who is in a similar situations the world over has the same level of pagam, same level of isser. The child should for sure be a pagum. I will ask the same kasha. Mala amana lekohen gadol shekin hi atzma mischaleles hachanavi kevin shenivel psula. So too here, the woman does have a level of psul, and she cannot marry a kohen. The Amar, let me see. Yeah, let's keep going. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan, I couldn't remember where I stopped. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon Minayin Lovi Kochavim Ve'eved Abal Ala Kohenes Ve'al Halavia Val Yisraelis. How do we know that in the case where a non-Jew or an Eved Kanani has been with either a Kohenes or a Levia or a Yisraelis, meaning any Jewish woman, Shepaslua, that she then becomes possible to marry a Kohen, Shneamar, Uvas Kohen, Ki Tiyeh Almana Ugrusha, and in that situation, when a Bas Kohen becomes widowed or a divorcee, she goes back to live in her father's house. So who does this apply to? Mishiyeshlo Almanus Begerishin Ba. Somebody to whom the status of almana or the status of a grusha actually applies. Yatsu, who's excluded from this? Ove kochavim ve'eved she'ein lahem almanus v'gerishin ba, because they have no status of marriage whatsoever, and because they have no status of marriage whatsoever, the child of that union is definitely pasul lekahuna. Amar le Abaye. So Abaye wants to know, my chazis tesamchas ad Rav Dimi earlier we brought a din of Rav Dimi in the name of Rebbe, who agrees that the kid is a mamzer. But why do you paskin that way? Samuch ad Rabin. Why don't you paskin like Rabin? Dichi asa Rabin amar Rabbi Nasan Rabbi Huda Nasi Morim Bala Hetera. So why don't you paskin like the version of Rabin that says that Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi held that the kid is mutter? So we see from here that there is actually a machlokes in Rabbi Uman Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi Rebbe, right?
Mhm.
That's how the punctuation goes.
Period.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to stop here. So we see that even that Rebbe, it's not so clear that Rebbe is the one who paskins the kid as a mamzer. There's a machlokes in the sheet of Rebbe. All right, Adkan. We'll pick up here toward the bottom of Memhei and Aleph tomorrow, and so Memhei now from this point on, because we've covered most of it, Memhei will be relatively short. We'll try to get into Memvav a little bit. We'll see how the prep goes. Moadim L'simcha. Have a wonderful day, Adkan.
And we come to any more